Let's move on to kind of our big topic today. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Troy S. And Troy S. writes, John, I'm sure you've seen by now that HBOMax has decided to release, well, it's not really HBOMax, but it's Warner Brothers, same company, that Warner Brothers and HBOMax has decided to release the bulk of its blockbuster movies next year in theaters and on HBOMax on the same day. Not the bulk. I believe it's all of them. I believe it's like 17 movies. I think that's what I heard. It's going to be 17 movies. All in theaters and on HBO Max on the same day. Not only Wonder Woman 84, but also movies like Dune, The Suicide Squad, Matrix 4 will all be released for streaming, bypassing the theatrical window. Do you believe this is the proverbial nail in the coffin for the theaters? And why do you think the new Batman wasn't on the list? Thanks. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in. And first, let's address the Batman one just for a second. The Batman one is actually fairly simple. Batman isn't until 2022, right? So don't forget that. Batman is not supposed to come out until 2022. So that takes care of the Batman situation. For those of you who haven't been keeping up to date on the story, this comes to us from the folks over at Variety who write, Warner Brothers plans to release in 2021, but Warner Brothers plans to release in 2021 will be available to HBO Max subscribers for 31 days. So they're going to put all their movies that are planned for 2021 out on HBO Max on the same day that they're released in theaters. We'll get to that part in a second, but it's non-consequential. But we'll get to that in a second. They're going to put it out on HBO Max for HBO Max subscribers for 31 days. After the 1 month mark, those movies will only play in theaters until they reach their traditional home entertainment frame. So they'll kind of respect the theatrical window afterwards, which doesn't really mean much, to be honest. From there, people can rent through online platforms like Amazon, iTunes, or Fandango. It's unclear when the titles will return to HBO Max, which of course they will at some point. Warner Media Chair and CEO Ann Sarnoff referred to the model as a unique one-year plan, to which we all collectively say, bullshit. Anyway, a unique one-year plan. Executives at the company have stressed the initiative isn't expected to continue into 2022 or beyond. Bullshit. It's considered a temporary solution in response to the ongoing global crisis. Rob, when we saw AMC make their deal with Universal to shorten theatrical windows, we said, well, that is a major shift. When Disney Plus and Disney decided to put Artemis Fowl bypass theaters and put it strictly onto Disney Plus, we said, well, that's a bit of a landmark. When Disney, we later found out, was going to be taking movies like Cruella and Pinocchio and a couple of others that were destined for the theater, well, that's a turning point. When Disney, still on Disney, decided to announce that Soul, their next Pixar film, was going to be transitioning instead of theatrically directly to Disney Plus, we said, well, that's a turning point. And they all have been. But there has not been, up until this moment, as definitive of a death knell for movie theaters and the changing of the paradigm than this one. I mean, for HBO to come out and for Warner Brothers to come out right now and say, all, not just the next movie, not just the next 2 movies, not just the next 3 movies, they're all going to come to HBO Max. 6 months ago, Rob, I would have said, and I believe I probably did say, to be fair, that this sort of a thing would be impossible. Maybe 7 months ago, that this sort of thing would be impossible. But as we repeatedly have said on this show over the past 7 months or so, is that every week that passes and this whole, the pandemic thing and the lockdown thing and everything has evolved week to week, we've been saying as more time goes on, more things that were at one point improbable become probable. And then the longer it goes on, the things that were considered impossible become possible. And the longer and longer this is stretched on, the more and more we've all seen the writing on the wall. Bob Chapek, CEO of Disney, said specifically that what the pandemic has done has drastically accelerated their plans. This is probably something that Disney and probably Warner Brothers wasn't going to really get to for a number of years. This whole stuff that we're seeing now was probably still years away. But as Bob Chapek said, all this stuff, the pandemic, the theater shutting down, it has accelerated their shift. All right, let's talk about a couple of things here. The first thing I want to talk about is, as we jump over to the Campea classroom just for a second, why I've had a number of people writing to me, why is Warner Brothers going to be putting this on HBO Max and why just for 31 days? And let's talk about why the 31. I'm going to give you just the quick 2-minute version here of the 45-minute breakdown we did for this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about why is Disney Plus, why is everything moving to Disney Plus? Why is Disney going all in on Disney Plus? Let's just break that down again here for a second. Keep these numbers in mind. These are important. When you look at something like Netflix, by the way, these numbers are taken from their publicly released because Netflix is a publicly traded company. Their financials are public. That's where these things were taken from. In 2019, Netflix had 193 million subscribers globally. That number has gone up. But we're just going to deal with the 2019 numbers right now. Netflix had 193 million subscribers globally, which equated to $23.81 billion in revenue. 28.8 or $23.81 billion in revenue. Then you look at their costs. They spent $14.7 billion in licensing fees for non-original content. $14.7 billion, Rob, for licensing fees for non-original content. They spent $10 billion in original productions, and they spent $4 billion in sales, general, and administrative, so basically operating costs. In other words, they made $24 billion, rounding up from 23.81. They made $24 billion, but they spent $29 billion. So even with 193 million subscribers worldwide, they were $5 billion in the hole for that year. That's why Netflix right now is overall about $15 billion in debt. They'll be fine. They make a lot of revenue. Their plan long-term is to increase revenue and decrease costs. They'll be fine, but that's the numbers. When you look about why this model is so attractive to somebody like Disney, look at the Disney model, right? It is being projected by the end of 2023 that Disney Plus is going to have 200 million subscribers. So roughly the same amount of subscribers that Netflix had at the end of 2019, right? Keep that in mind. Roughly the same number as Netflix. By the end of 2023, they're going to have 200 million subscribers at a cheaper monthly cost. It'll probably be up around $10, $11, or $12 by the time 2023 comes around. That means they're going to have $24 billion in revenue, roughly the same as Netflix did in 2019, right? But here's the big difference. Disney is going to have zero licensing fees. Whereas Netflix in 2019 had to pay $14.7 billion in licensing fees, Disney is going to pay none because Disney owns everything on their streaming platform. How does this all tie into the HBO Max thing? We'll get to that, but keep these. It's important to have these numbers in mind. So they're going to spend roughly the same amount Netflix did, $10 billion in original things. They're going to spend a little bit more in operating costs at $7 billion instead of $4 billion. But look at this final number. Even though Disney Plus is going to have roughly the same amount of subscribers at a cheaper price, where Netflix was $5 billion in the hole, Disney Plus is going to make $7 billion in profit. To understand how big of a number that is, Rob, in 2019, all of Disney's corporations, parks, experiences, licensing, merchandising, movies, television, everything combined, Disney made $11 billion in profit. We're in a position and in a model now where Disney Plus by itself could generate $7 billion in profit all by itself. And that's with conservative estimates.
That's with one show.
And yeah, that's with Mandalorian. That's the type of projections they have, right?
Wait till the MCU shows start to hit.
Wait till everything starts to go. So then how does this all tie into HBO Max? Well, HBO Max is in a similar, not identical, but in a similar place. Warner Brothers and HBO Max is in a similar place and position as Disney with Disney Plus is, right? They have been transitioning very subtly the last couple of years to really mostly carrying their own content that they own. There is licensed content on there, but they are moving away from that. They've been slowly but surely moving away from licensed content, and they see the writing on the wall. Now, they're about, I think, about half the number of subscribers that Disney Plus has right now. But they're looking at this, and Rob, right now, Warner Brothers is seeing Disney accelerate their plans and extending that lead. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, HBO and HBOMax combined have about 35 to 40 million subscribers, as compared to Disney that in just 1 year has 73 million subscribers. They're falling behind. And they're seeing Disney Plus now putting things like Soul, we know Pinocchio and Cruella, and I still believe, I don't know for a fact, but I still believe that on December 10th, they will announce that Black Widow is being moved over to Disney Plus. Oh, I still believe that. Again, I don't know that that's true. It's what I believe will happen. So Warner Brothers is in this position of seeing, we see the writing on the wall. We know what these numbers are. So we're going to put the pedal to the metal and try to get in a competitive advantage over something like Disney. So then it raises the question about why is Disney, or why is Warner Brothers and HBO only going to put their movies for a 30-day window? Why only a 30-day window? Why, when they launch Wonder Woman 84, is it going to be only for 30 days? Why, once they put Dune on HBO Max, is it only for 30 days to start? The reason is a classic, tried and tested, old as song itself, artificial urgency. It's the same thing of like while supplies last, or for a limited time. What these sorts of marketing, this kind of marketing lingo does is it creates in the potential consumer a artificial sense of urgency. Because, you know, you hear, oh, all these things are going to HBO Max. And you might think, if you're not a customer already, you might think, oh, okay, at some point I'm going to get HBO Max then. Someday I'm going to get that if all this good stuff's going to be on there. What they are doing is creating an artificial sense of urgency. It's like, hey, better sign up. We've got this movie coming out. And here's where the idea is actually brilliant. They get to do that with Wonder Woman 84. Limited time only, everybody. All you got to do is sign up for HBO Max and you get to watch Wonder Woman 84. And they're going to have a certain degree of success with that. How big or how small success, we'll find out. But they're going to have a certain degree of success with it. But then they get to do it again, Rob. When Dune comes out, I can't remember the release date, they're going to get to do this all again. Artificially urgent, while supplies last, limited time, everybody. For 30 days, you can watch this. And so they'll have a certain amount of success with that. And then they'll get to do that same success again with Suicide Squad. And then they'll get to do that same thing with Matrix. And then they'll get to do the same thing with that Denzel Washington movie they've got coming out this year. And then they'll get to do it 14 more times in the same year. Create a sense of artificial urgency while supplies last, limited time, everybody sign up. And here's the other bit of brilliance about this, Rob, where there's a lot of people that are becoming wave riding subscribers, where it's like, okay, I'll subscribe to Disney Plus while Mandalorian is on. And then once Mandalorian's done, I'll unsubscribe. By doing this, I got to give credit where it's due, man. HBO Max is doing something brilliant. By doing this with, I believe it's 17 titles over the course of 2021, there's no point in unsubscribing. So people go, okay, I'll sign up for Wonder Woman. I was thinking about unsubscribing, but you know, in about 3 or 4 weeks, they've got this other movie coming out. And then that one comes out. And they're, well, I was going to unsubscribe, but in a couple weeks, James Gunn's Suicide Squad comes out, right? It is actually brilliant. Will it be enough to get them up to 73 million subscribers by the end of 2021 like Disney has now? I don't know if it'll give them that big of a boost, but it's certainly attractive. And then they still get to say we're supporting the movie theaters, but who's going to go to the movie theaters to watch it when they can just watch it on HBO Max? Some people, obviously, but the same number, obviously not. And they'll still be able to get some rental fees from people who don't sign up for it. But Rob, even then, once Wonder Woman is done its 30-day run on HBO Max, then it becomes available for renters. Now, people are going to rent. There are going to be people who want Wonder Woman 84, and then they're going to rent it for $7 or $8. And they're thinking, you know what? For almost the same price, I could have just got HBO Max, period, and I can get all these movies. That it's in and of itself is going to become incentivizing for people to go over and just sign up for HBO Max. I got to tell you, it is a bold, it is forward-thinking, it is the strategy is well thought out. This is a very good move on their part. The one bit of bullshit is this is a unique one-year plan. This is a unique one-year plan. And I'll say this, Rob. There's no way this is a one-year plan. They're going to do this. If they add 20 million new subscribers this year, think about how long HBO has been around. If they add 20 to 30 new subscribers this year, there's no way they're changing that plan. The only way it's a one-year plan is if they get through 2021 and they've added 6 million more subscribers. If they totally fall on their face and this backfires and it doesn't make them money, then sure. But I am telling you, Rob, this is the final nail in the coffin. Movie theaters are dead. They'll always be around to some degree, serving a certain demographic, and they're going to have their niche audiences, and they'll always be around. But this is it. And now it's going to be a domino effect. Disney Plus did something that made HBO Max react. Now HBO Max has reacted, and now we're going to hear December 10th. I'm telling you, we're going to hear some major stuff coming out of Disney about that's really going to all feed into this transition to Disney Plus. Rob, this is... You can't overstate it. This news is titanic. You saw it. You heard it. What's your breakdown of all this?
Well, there's something too. I mean, a very astute breakdown you made, but there's something I wanted to add to this. And that is the movie business is a very volatile business. You can spend $200 million on a movie and wind up with Catwoman. Not that Catwoman costs $200 million, but there's no guarantee that for the amount of money that you lay out, you hope it works. You take a big picture to market. You hope it's going to make $1 billion, but you never know. What HBO Max is doing, what this strategy is doing, is shoring up the cash flow of the whole company, because when you have a certain subscriber base, you know how much money you're making every month. And if you have a film that, say, doesn't perform as well as you might have hoped in a theater, you add it to that 17 movie group and it keeps people coming back. It's a lot more stable to know that, okay, we have 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million subscribers every month. So we know how much money is coming into the studio. And remember also, this is AT&T. You know, they've built the infrastructure that's delivering this content to your house. They're building those pipelines. They're making the money. So while this is great, what this all really is AT&T wants you to rely on their infrastructure. And the more people that do, the more money they can spend expanding that infrastructure and charging people for their phones, charging people bundles and all that. So they're making money not just through HBO Max subscriptions, but through the actual boxes in your house that are delivering this stuff. So there's a whole economic ecosphere that they're feeding that is theirs, soup to nuts. And it's a pretty brilliant plan, but we're just looking at it from a filmmaking perspective and getting movies into the theaters. But I think from a business standpoint, this is a pretty genius move all the way around. Does it bum me out that, like you astutely put it, this is the death of movie theaters? But this was an inevitable death that I thought was going to be a slow burn process over 10 years. But it's kind of like my beloved Laserdiscs that I thought were going to stick around. When DVD hit the market, Laserdiscs were dead in 6 months. Whether you choose to believe it or not, they were gone. I mean, it took a little more than that, but you saw that the writing was on the wall. This strategy is better for everybody from an economic standpoint. And
except for
it
the
ain't
theaters.
Show Fred's, John. Well, that's what I mean. But that's the evolution of the world. As much as I hope that like giant theaters will stick around, and I want to be able to go to the Cinerama Dome and see movies. If that is not in my future, I did have this amount of time on the earth enjoying movies in the theater, but that time is rapidly coming to an end.
And here's the other thing, Rob. I hear some people, understandably so, will say, but John, they're still going to put these movies, Matrix 4, Dune, Suicide Squad, all these, they're still going to put them in theaters. Theaters will still survive. Here's the problem that we got to think about here. All right, let's just use some random numbers just to illustrate the point. Let's say to operate, let's call it operating costs. To operate your movie theater chain, again, we're just going to make up some numbers here just to illustrate a point, okay? Let's say your operating costs are $5 billion, okay? And your income is expected that year to be, I don't know, $5.8 billion. Great, you've made $800 million in profit, right? Well, what happens when one of the major studios that supplies you with your product, one of the major studios that supplies you with your product that you sell to the audience, what happens when they pull 17 of their films and say this is going to go on HBOMax first? It's going to eat away and cannibalize at the number of people that could come in. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at an income of, I don't know, $3.4 billion. Now, all of a sudden, your company is losing what it would be here, $1.6 billion. Instead of making $800 million in profit in the year, yay, we're getting all this product. Now, a large chunk of your supply, a large chunk of your product has been compromised and will lose not all of its revenue generating properties for your company, but a significant chunk. Right. So yeah, they're still going to put these movies in theaters. It is a short-term money-losing gap, and it's going to spell doom, Rob, for these major theater chains. And look, again, like I always say, just the way record players and vinyl are still around in some way, movie theaters will still be around, but the paradigm is completely about to change. Their prominence in the pecking order is about to drop really, really low. And this Warner Brothers thing. Here's a question for you, Rob. We saw Disney move Soul to Disney Plus and blah, blah, blah. Then we saw Wonder Woman is going to go on HBO Max. Then we heard even more Disney things are going to. Now that Warner Brothers has come out and said, we're putting all of our 2021 movies on HBO Max. What do you think Disney's response is going to be? Like, how significant could this December 10th event be? And how big of a tectonic shift could we see now from Disney in response to what Warner Brothers and HBO has done?
John, I think that, I mean, Disney Plus's subscriber base over the last year has shown how viable their streaming model can be, and that's based on one show that people like. And of course, they had
one show. That's all we've had from them is one show.
You know, they had Hamilton, and they always have the family audience. But imagine when they start dropping these Marvel shows, and imagine when they have a new show like this of this caliber coming every 2 months or every month. You know, you've got Mando season 3 and 4. You've got Obi-Wan. You've got the MCU shows. And oh my God. And they're releasing these shows weekly. So you're going to have overlap. You're going to have 8 episodes of Mando that play over 2 months. You're going to have 8 episodes of WandaVision. Imagine when you have 2 shows a week of just, I mean, even if they're only half an hour each, I can't even imagine where Disney could be in 2 or 3 years. 250 million subscribers?
They're projecting 200 million by the end of 2023. 200 million, which would give them $7 billion of profit. And that's conservative. And
John, that's only with $6 a month. Wait till they go to 2022 and they decide that they're going to make it $9 a month.
Oh, they will. It'll be sometime. They'll move it up to $10 this year, I think.
You think people aren't going to pay that? And I'll tell you something else. In a way, from you have a film now playing. You're now a content creator. You've made a film. What this is going to do from a creative perspective is I think it's going to allow the business to have more stability from an economic standpoint to make more things, more diverse things, because with this kind of money coming in, they can't just make MCU shows and The Mandalorian forever. They're going to have to, audiences get older. They're going to want to see other things. So they're going to have, I think, more opportunity for other creators to create new stuff because the economics are more solid than trying to do a crapshoot into ether when you're trying to sell a studio on your original IP. And they're like, well, we'd rather go make something that's more, So I think in a way, this could be a win-win for everybody.
It could be.
New content creator. It could be.
Could be. I also fear it could go the other way where Disney sees, hey, we're generating all this money every month and we don't have to make shit, but we'll see. But I did want to point one other thing, Rob, about the economics when it comes to the movie theaters. It was roughly around 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when that news came out. I want you to look at something here. This is the stock tracker of AMC theaters. All right, take a look at this.
Yeah.
You see how it's all hovering up around 4? And then it hits that point. You see where it hits that point over there, where all of a sudden it starts to dive. That was between 1 and 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when the news came out about Warner Brothers taking all their movies right to HBO Max. Look what happened at the exact same time. Once that announcement was made, look at what happened to the stocks. My wife owns a bunch of AMC stock. This was not a happy morning for us as we looked at our AMC portfolio. Not a good morning for us. But that is just an example of where things are. It is kind of crazy. Anyway, I'm sure we're going to talk more about this in the live questions part of the show. We're going to move on to the next part of this story. But just for now, guys, general feeling. What do you think about this whole move? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Now,